So hello everyone, welcome back to chapter 5 of Android training series by host-tune-form.com. And as of now, we started up building up this app, and in the previous chapter we built up this slider. And as you remember, like this slider is built up. If I release it here, it moves to the very top. But if I go to the very end, it should have moved into a next activity. So we have not created up the second activity, which we will be creating up right now. So in today's chapter, that is chapter 5, we will be discussing about SQLite for Android. So we will be learning how to use this. So just for a short representation, this is something which is done by a Java, and you should be aware of something called as SQL. Not if not so deep, but yes, you should be aware of the basics of SQL to understand this chapter. Then what we will do is, like, in this particular chapter we will be creating a code where we will be like, whenever a person like reaches this end, he will move up to a next activity, and as he moves up to the next activity, you will create up a database, insert value in the SQLite database, then read value from the SQLite database, and then like put it up on the UI. So this is what like we are going to do in this chapter. So let us begin. So we will first study about SQLite database in Android. SQLite database in Android. So in Android, you require two things at first to start for SQLite. So one will be a class. This class will contain all your tables, schema, right? And this class will implement base columns. And you will need another class which will be, you can say, database helper, and this class will like extend SQLite open helper. So this spelling might be wrong, we will just check it in the like code later on, but yes, these will be the two classes which you will require at start. So what this database helper will do for you is, it will create up a database and it will keep track of version. So what does this mean? It means like, you create up a database, say, so your user like closes up your app and opens it again. So there must be some mechanism which should check if the database is already created. It should not create it again. So this is what like database helper will do. It will like, first it will help you in like maintaining the versioning for the database, and second, like it will help you take control of database to Java code, through Java code. So you will just take control of database using this helper class. So there is a function in database helper which is like, get writable database, and you can like get the database connection. So this is what it means. Like control means that you will be creating a connection with the database, right? So these are the two things which are required in SQLite before like you start up with your work. So as you get access to the database using these two classes, then you perform various actions, such as you can say that you can perform an insert like action. I can say this, or you can update a table, then you can delete from a table, and you might be able to delete the table completely. So here you are deleting the rows. So, and then we can say create table. So in a similar way, there can be various actions which can be performed after like creating of the database, defining the tables, everything via these two classes. Then you will have to write up your code in like in any functionality you want. Say in any like functionality you want to insert a data while registering, so you can just register our data. So what we prefer is like we will create a separate class for each like operation. So let's say like I will say like I will create another class for insert, and I will create one for update, one for delete, and simply like I will have a class, a Java file for this, a Java file for this. So if I go back over here on my screen and just show you up the files, which should be now in Android and chapter 5 and content. So if you see over here, like I have already like got some of these. So you can say that we can insert and obviously we can read. This was what I was thinking of. So this is not create, this is read from table. So this makes sense now. So these are the four operations. I think we say them CRUD operations in SQL. So these will be the actions which we will be performing for, and for each action, like I have just written up a class. So you can see that D is nothing but just a database, and I am saying delete API. Then D is nothing but database. Then I am saying insert API. Then I am reading from tables. Then this is the class where I am creating up my tables. So I'm defining the structure of my tables, and this is the class which have the code for updation. This is the database helper class. This is something like which should be like I will explain you obviously all of them. And then as you get all of these done, you I have two files. These two files contains the code how to do it on the UI. So you will get more clarity as we will progress on this. So, and there is one more Java file which is pasted over here is like static variables. Why it is required, I will just discuss that too. But let us go ahead and complete the first part of today's training, which is like understanding the database helper and the table contract. So I've opened up these two files out here. You can see, right? So let me go ahead and create up these class in Android. So to create a Java file, I just need to go to this particular folder, right click, say new, and I just want a Java class. So now this particular Java class, let me name is D table and contract the same, and let me pick class. So this will create up this thing. Let me copy it and let me paste it from here below the package. So I need to maintain the package name the same, right? So package is this for our case, and now we have this code for dtable contract. We have two files. Let us have another file and say another Java class, and I want the name of this Java class to be database helper. Database helper. Let me go over here and again copy database helper and paste it out here, and let me delete this package name, and let us keep it with the original for this particular case, which is this. Now let me go back to my uh, table contract class. So this is the class like where I am implementing up the structure of my tables. This is the class, and as you can see that this is a very normal class. You can name it anything. It does not extends anything. It does not implements anything. But here I said like this implements base columns. So this is implementing a base column like inside an inner class. So this is like how this should be created up, and this is how like this has been given as per the documentation of Android. So obviously I am following that. So this is the upper class, and this is the constructor of this class where I'm just giving in the logs. And why we are getting this very like error over here is because I should have a like class over here which is static variables and which should contain few variables. I will discuss about that. in a moment. So this particular class actually is built up in a way. This is the outer class, and the inner class is implementing a base columns, you can see. And this is the name of a table. So this is how like the naming convention should be, and obviously this makes things more clearer when you read it again or someone else reads up your code. So I always prefer to give up the name of the table. So table company data, the name was company data for table, and this particular table has all these like fields or columns. So one is this, second is this, third is this, fourth, fifth, sixth, and they are of type text, integer, and text, integer, integer, and this is the primary key. So obviously this is just the format. You can see that this completely is a string. So I'm just passing up a create table SQL statement inside this string variable. So this is what you need to do. So this particular inner table defines the structure in the form of string variables. So you just need to create a string variable, and you need to like define up this thing, and please try to make this thing final. This is required. And what is the meaning of implements base column? So as you can see that we have so many like columns in the table, but there will be two columns which will be added by the SQLite itself. Every table will have a column which is underscore ID, and they will have a column which is underscore count. So these are nothing but the string which contains the column names, so that when you have to fetch them, you can fetch it, and this is what this interface defines, which is base columns. So it will not do anything. It will just add these two columns saying that to the table while it creates it. So this is the advantage of base columns, and like this is required when you are using this with the predefined functions from Android. So never forget to implement base columns while creating up the structure, and then like you can define the string. The name can be anything. Obviously it should reflect what it is doing. So this is the string for dropping a table. So I'm just writing up the SQL statements, right, inside strings. And I move to the next class. This is the second inner class to our outer class, which is the table contract. So this outer class contains all the tables. First class is the first table, second class is the second table, and similarly the third class is the third table, and all of the three classes have the same structure. We have the class name which implements base columns, and then we have final string and then the SQL statement written out here. So why I have taken up this in a separate class is like, let me go ahead and first say new Java class and say static variables and hit enter. Go back and see static variables. This is done, and I now need the variables. Let me go back to my edit over here, copy it for now, go back to my this place, paste it, and remove the new old package name. This is good. So what is the advantage of having it in a separate file? So when I say that, I need to change up the column name, so I do not have to go and change inside the query. Like people may make mistake while like may not give a space or may do some blunder out here. So static variable contains all the column names. You can see over here that this has a lot of values which are used by the application, but go and see ahead specifically tables. So these are the table variables. These are nothing but like the static variables which are used throughout the application, and that's why like we have kept them the same way, and this defines the table column name. This maintains the data integrity, right? So having a separate file maintains the data integrity. So this is what the table contract class has. So we will be using up this class in database helper, because this is the place where we define up the structure of your database and create the database. So now let's see how database helper is formed. So before going to that, let us see the packages. which were involved in D table contract. So this is the package. Obviously, you do not need to remember the complete package. If I just remove it and this becomes red, alt enter, you just need to do import class, right? So this is how you can get up the packages. So I am again into database helper. This is the class database helper, and this class extends SQLite open helper. This is the predefined like class built by Android, and you're just inheriting it. And as you inherit it, there will be few properties which will be gained by this class by it. So what are these properties? Let us see that. The first thing which you require in database helper are these two statements. So one is the integer which defines the database version. So we will talk about it. So I'm defining the database version to be static variable dot database version, which is in this class, and database version is 1 and database name is orthophonic. So we are putting up the version, then we are putting up the name in string variable, and we have these two things which maintains the versioning of your database. Now the next part for database helper is the constructor, which you can see. So this constructor is calling super and it is passing on the context. This context is like filled up as you call up this object, and you say that you have a database name which you are giving in and you have a database version, and here it checks like on this statement it checks like what it has to do. So if the database name has not been like written, you are creating up your database for the first time, so then it will call the onCreate method. Or else if it is not created, it has already been created, it will never call onCreate. Now the next thing is the database version. So what if you are using up the version 1 now and you make some changes in the database and now it becomes database version 2. So you have to again reassign the tables, you have to alter the tables, etc. and etc. And you have to write a lot of SQL statements, and you can write these SQL statement in this class in the table itself. So for all the SQL statements which will be used like while creating it, upgrading it or downgrading it should be written in this particular class, which is again the inner class for this class. And inside this we have a string which contains the SQL statement for create table. Sorry. So now this super manages this. Now what I will do is that there is something called as factory over here. What is factory? So as of now, this is the SQLite and this is all managed by Android for your application. But there might be a scenario in which like your company has 5 applications, and whatever a person does on his application, like its data gets stored in the another application, like even on the local. So if you're using the app on the same system, you can communicate between two apps, right, using intents. So this is what is explicit intent. So if there might be some scenario and like factory settings is like you are creating up this particular database helper from some configuration settings, and in this configuration settings you can like set up the context what you're talking about. So context is something which defines what application or like what even within an application what from what activity or like what fragment you are talking. So it is the identity of the thread. I always say like this. So this is the place which defines these things. So let me like go ahead and like at first like remove them for now and just right click and say generate. If I say override methods, you can see that we can override on downgrade, on create, on upgrade. So these are the methods like which are being managed by database helper. This is how it manages your database, and that's why we call it as database helper. But here I'm just representing this scenario on like on create and on upgrade. So I think this should be clear, like if the database version changes from 1 to 2 but the database remains the same and the database already exists, then only upgrade will be called. If no database is there, then on create will be called. If the database exists and the current version is 2, and the database version is shifted to 1, then the downgrade method will be called, which is not overridden over here, which should be overridden in an ideal case. So inside these functions, as you know that this method will be called when you will have to write in what all SQL statements you need to execute while you create it, while you upgrade it, or while you downgrade it. And these SQL statements can like reside in the classes which you define for these tables. So like this maintains your data at a single place and you know where it is. So these are the two things which are required to create up the schema and getting the connection to the database. And obviously the connection is made by Android by itself, and this is just the static variables which like maintains the data integrity throughout. So we are done with database helper, table contract, and static variable. Let us go ahead and now insert. So this is what we will do. We will go ahead and perform an insert action. So for performing an insert action, we should know where we need to perform an insert action. So here in this case, we will be performing an insert action as soon as the application is being changed from one activity to another activity. So to do this, let me just click here and say new activity and empty activity. So let me name it as second activity and layout name as activity second, and this is now the launcher activity, and just say finish. So as I create it, I get an activity over here, Java class, and a corresponding layout file in layout. So I can just see the code. This is the layout, and then we have an entry in the Android manifest where we say that we have added another activity, which is the second activity, you can say. So we did not select the launcher, and that's why it did not added something called as like this intent filter. So we have added an activity. So we are good with an activity. Let me close all of them. And now let us go to the place where we need to like trigger the SQL and insert and view. So the auto funnel. In auto funnel class, here we like animated this button for slider button, and like we have a place over here which is action up. So this action up like defines if this was greater than px, which was the length of the relative layout, then this should move on to the next activity. So this is the implicit intent. So today, like when we say that we will be studying up moving from one activity to another, how we move from one activity to another, we move from one activity to another using intents. Intents are of various types. We have implicit intents, explicit intents, then we have pending intents. So intents have a lot of role in like the movement between one place to another and the movement of data. So let us talk about the implicit intents, right? This is what the implicit intent is. What is implicit intent? When we have two activities, one this and the second this, when we have two activities within an application and we have to move from one activity to another activity, we do it via a implicit intent. So you can see the code out here. This is the code. You are moving from auto funnel and you're moving to second activity. So I will have to say capital S, moving on a second activity. And then after defining up the object of the intent, you say new intent. And again, I'm just reiterating. So this is auto funnel dot this is giving the context of this particular activity. It is saying move from the context of auto funnel to the context of second activity. and it has passed on the instructions to this object. Now you are saying that please start this activity. Which activity? Which is defined as per the instructions of this implicit intent. Start activity, if you see, start activity is called without anything, so this means that this is the uh, function which has been like given by this class to autofunnel. So this is the activity class which has all the functions related to activity, and from moving one activity to another we have a function in this class which is start activity, but it requires an parameter which is intent. This is what we are doing, and let us go to the second activity. And I will not do a lot of things. Let me just say log dot I am on second activity, and just say I am in on create method. Close this. Log is not recognized. Oh, alt enter import class, and this looks good. So it will just uh, log a statement for us. So now let us go ahead and like pause our emulator and let us rerun this app, and let's see what has happened as of now. The log cat here down. I need to select the emulator, which is good, and then this is also good. Let me just say I. So it will just give me the information. Let me delete all the logs. Go back here and let me scroll it till the end. So as I scroll it till the end, you see that it has now changed from one activity to another activity, and now this activity is blank because we do not have anything in the layout. We are not putting up anything. So that's why it is blank. But the very last thing you can see in the logs. So the very last log is something which says that I am in onCreate method for second activity. So this is how you are moving from one activity to another activity. Now inside this second activity, let us go ahead and say that whenever this second activity is loaded, then check if database is created or not. Then say that if it is not created, please create it. And then on we will write some code out here, and then after doing this we will say that now please insert below record. So we will be inserting a single record for now. Please insert below record into table 1, say. Now after doing that I will just say that please extract the company name of row 1 and show. Let us keep it this way. We put up a code for this, and at last we will say that please show it up on the UI. So for showing up the company name on the UI, this is what all things we are doing over here. So to show up the company name on the UI, I will just go to the second activity and let me go to the design part and let me go to text view and just drop in a text view out here and let me mark it in the center. Say, for instance, this becomes very easy with constraint layout. So everything is now in the code. You have a text view and let me give it an ID and say company name, and let me say underscore out here. Wrap content is good. Wrap content is good because we do not know the size of a text. The company name can be of any size. So wrap content means it will go up with the size of the content. Then the parent we have these constraints applied because in design we said 1, 2, 3, and 4 constraints, and that's why for bottom and start and top, both, for all the 4 constraints we have from the parent. So this is nothing but like this particular element will be visible at the very center, and if I say save, and let me just give it a default value for now. So let me say that this is my default value. Let me save it and rerun the application, delete the logs, and go back here and move till the end. So you see that I'm on the second activity, and this also displays a text over here which is this is my default value. You can see out here, this is my default value. Okay, so now let us begin writing up this code. So to check if the database is created or not, we will have to just write a 2-line code, copy it, copy it and paste it. So you already have this class inside your package, which is database helper, and you are saying new database helper, and this particular class constructor is taking up an argument which is context. This is required by the super class, which is this. That's why we are taking this up from the activity. So again, this particular activity has a context, and this method has been defined in app compact activity. So you're just calling it up, say, until and unless you are not inheriting of this activity, you cannot call this way. So you're just calling it get application context, and you have the key, the context to this activity, and you're passing it with this database helper. So this means that this particular activity of this application is trying to access a database. So this way, like, the Android makes sure that another application does not take access of your database. So this does this part of the code, and now we have to insert a record in a table. So for inserting a record in a table, we need two things. We need the table name, which says that again we also need the database name, which we will mention up. Give me a second. So obviously, like, the database name over here is mentioned up in database helper, which is this, and that's why we are just giving up a table name over here. Content values is showing up red. Alt enter import class. This is a class by Android, and this is where you give up the values for, like, this. You can say that this is a record, right? And this record should be there in this table. So that's why you have taken up these two variables. And after taking these two variables, let me just say that I am calling up a function which is this. So this way it becomes clean, and you will be able to see the code in a single window. So this is where you are defining the database. Then you are saying you have to insert it. So for inserting, you need these two things, table name and content values, and then you will have to call up this function. So let us, like, as we are taking it outside this function, so that's why we will have to pass it. Otherwise, let's say, like let me just cut it and say that I will take these two variables inside the function, uh, which is this. So let us create up this function. Let me say insert function, and for inserting it, let me just first copy paste the code, and then we will talk about it. This is my complete function. Let me paste it, and now it becomes more clear to you within a time. So at first it is showing us a lot of errors, Let me see these errors. Before seeing them, let me copy these two variables and paste it inside this function for now. So let me paste it here. So let me just remove this from here, because this means it is expecting a table name variable of the class, but this variable is for the function. Then we have the content values. So inside this function, now see what is happening. We have a table name, we have values, and values we see that we just say new content values and an object will be instantiated, and these are nothing but the logs. And then we have a date format, so we are requiring a date out here. So let me say for Java, and this is also import class from Java, and let me import it from again Java util convert to null. This is not required. Let me delete uh, all of these logs, not required, and let us see this code now. So if you see this code, as of now what we have done, we have just defined up the table name. The table name is this, which is company table name, and it is defined in the static variable. The string value is defined in the static variable class. So this S should have been capital because this represents a class which is not, they are not following up the naming convention for this particular class. So this can be marked as a very low priority defect. Anyway, now when we say table name, static variables or table name, we have given the table name, then we have instantiated the object, and we have like the current date over here. So this particular two lines is just giving us the date. This is the date, and this is what like we have instantiated these two variables as of now. After doing this, values has a function which is put, and we say that please put the first column, the column name, and then the value name. We are putting up the column name and the value name. If you just go ahead and delete these two will not be like added up, and these two values will be put it up as null in your database. So here we are like putting up all the values, and after putting up the values, we have to like call the insert, like we have to like initiate uh like the input process. So how to initiate the input process, we will just talk about it. So all of this particular thing, if this is understood to you, so we have collected all the variables and we have to just process them now. We have the table name, we have the helper, and then we have the values. We have to just process it now. So again, we need this helper. So let me say that this particular function requires a helper, and let me say C and V, and let me just pass on this here, and it says that unhandled exception. Let me say try and catch, and just paste it, say exception, any kind of exception, and say log dot I exception raised, and just say e dot get message. Okay, this makes sense now. So you're doing it in a try, if there will be an error we can see it in the logs, right? And we're calling a function which is insert API, and in this function we have these two variables, which is table name and then the row which we have to input. So this row we have like filled in via the content values class of Android. And after doing this, like we here we this again is something which is in try catch, and you are just like catching different kind of exceptions. Okay, so let me take it from SQL. So this is good now, and the only thing which is here is the insert API. So this is how like I am inserting up the row. To make it more clearer, let me delete it and say that inside it, what I will need is I will need a code to insert all these values into database. So how I will do it? Let me show it to you. So here to do this, at first I need something which is this, which is SQLite database. So again, always this is a bad habit to put up the variables as and when required. Rather, we should always put them at the very top, and that's why I'm putting it up there. So why we need it, I will just tell you. Then I'm going back down here, and there seems to be an error out here. Let me see. Let us delete for a time being and not indulge in this. Okay, so now I have to insert all these values into the database. So I have copied up one particular variable which was SQLite database. This variable is required to get the access of the database. So database helper is just a middle connector which will give you the access to whom this will be the working agent, which is DB. So to do this, I will have to initialize this variable. So let me initialize this variable. So again, this particular variable helper was passed up here as an argument and as a parameter, sorry, and this is like passed as an argument here. So we have initialized the object from where we are going to take up the connection, and then after doing this we have to just say this. Let me copy it. So I'm just saying it in a try catch. So we have to define one more variable out here, which is int count. And let me go back here and see if we have an extra. Let me see the error out here. It is cast to int. Okay. So this particular value is long. This sometimes happens, right? So this was long and this was passing up long. So here we have just defined up the database helper, and now you should concentrate on the code which begins from here line number 85 till line number 112. So we have the entire try catch. This is just the catch where we are just throwing up the error and like writing up the logs, and this is actually where we need to concentrate. So now we have got access to the database, and using this we can insert value. How? We just need to say db.insert. This takes few variables, the table name and the values for this particular record. So again, you can see out here, if I just say db.insert, so you can say that we have this insert function and it has few like arguments which have to be taken up. So again, there are some other types of insert or throw. If it is not able to insert, it can throw the exception straight away, but like we are just inserting it and throwing it manually. So there are different kinds which can be seen over here, but now we are just using up the insert statement. So as we are doing up the insert in a similar way, we can do the update, and then we can so delete. So they have different variable like arguments. You have to understand what is the meaning of them. We will talk about it. So as of now we are just inserting it, and so we are just saying db.insert, and this like returns a value long, which is count, which says like how many like records were inserted. So again, like here we are just inserting up a single row, and we have put up the values over here. And now at the end we say the db.close. It is required to close up the database. Again, if you are not closing up the helper, it means that you might use up somewhere else, but you should always close the helper if the person like goes down with an activity. So during the life cycle of an activity, we like studied about on destroy, or like on back button pressed, or like on pause. So this helper should always get closed during on pause, but here let us like keep it this way. I am just closing it. So this is just a tutorial to let you know that these two things are required to be closed. So we are closing them over here, and now let me just save it, and we have this function ready, and we have just called up this function over here, and we are now inserting the value, right? So now we will have to move on to the next part, which is like extracting it and then showing it up on the UI. So to do this, let me just copy this and paste it here. And here let me say that this is, rather than insert, this is read. Let me not pass in a helper. I will just create a new one over there. And this read helper will be like extracting of the company name. So let me say string company name, company company name, equal to this. And this looks good. And this company name will be shown up on the UI over here after this line, right? So let me go ahead and create up this function, which is dread API, and for this let me say public, and return type is string, and then I will say API. Let me just mark it and double hit enter. So this looks good. Here I need the code for reading from database, right? So let me go ahead and just, there's an error, written missing return statement. So what we have to return, we have to return something which is called as company name, and let us return it company name, right? Now we're returning the company name, and it says that it must not be initialized. So let me say it as null for now. So we are free of errors, and see, this is what we are doing. So to do this, let me just copy of this code and paste it here. We have a lot of errors, so let me see the errors. Okay, so we have not pasted up the GB helper. No, it's not been initialized. So let me just copy it and paste it. So if you see out here in this insert API, we already closed up the helper and like the SQL uh, database, right? So if I just go ahead and show you of this, so here in this code we closed up, uh, you can find up it here. So we closed up DB and helper, both of them, and hence like we are required to like reinitialize them. So that's why I have like defined up this DB helper, and I will also need up this particular variable which is SQLite DB. Let me just paste it. Oh, it is already there, so I can see it. Its company name is mentioned twice. I do not need it. So this is the helper, this is the table name, this is the DB connection, and then these are the variables which are required for reading. So what exactly they are, we will discuss about it. So I will say required for reading, and this is the cursor. So as you have cursor in Selenium or any other language to read up the database from code, this is the same cursor which will scroll on your database one by one. How we will talk about it. So here I am defining up the values, and after defining up the values, what I am doing is I am defining up some more values here, and this is giving me an error because I am using up a this. Let me resolve the error first. Let me go down, and it gives me an error because this particular function returns me a string array. So this should be going into the projection, and that's why it is giving me an error. You can see out here, provided string array but required type is string. So what I will do is I will just mention it, like give me the column name at position 1, which is 0. This clears all of my errors, and now we can read up the code. Again, this is our function. We have a database helper, we have the table name from where we have to read, we have the SQLite database GB variable, and then we have few variables which are listed out here, which like are important to understand. So what is projection? So while you build up a query, you say something like select star from table 1. When you do something like this and you say star, this is something when you say that projection is null. If projection is null, this is what. So at first, let us understand what is projection. So in SQL, when you do something like select star from table 1, so this star means please give us all the columns. This means when projection is null, it will be very similar to star. So this is something you will need to learn. This is how the mapping is done. But if you need to say that I need column 1, then column 2 only from table 1, then you need to define two like values of projection array, and one will contain column 1 and second will contain column 2. Then what is selection? In selection, you will say that you write a query like select star from table 1 where date is less than 111111111. For example, let us take this. So the where clause gives us the condition where we have the column name, and then we say something like this value. So in this case, the value will be represented by a question mark. And this selection argument is nothing but the value which is presented by the question mark. So the as many question marks you have, like if you have 5 question marks in selection string, then you will have 5 values in this array. If we have 2 question marks in selection string, then we have 2 values in this array. Then string order is something when you say select start from table 1 and say order by, and you give a column name and then say A S C as for ascending order. So this order by clause is nothing but the string order. Whatever is written after this order by clause should be in the string, and then cursor is something like which is collecting up the data, and you can like take up it in the code and use it. So these are few like variables which are required to read up SQL, and this should sound logical to you if you know about SQL. So again, here we are saying the company name is null for now. So we have already defined it null above. We do not require this. So projection is the column names, right? So we need only one column, which is company name. So this column is defined here. This is the column name, which is company name. And after that, we are saying that we do not want any selection. That's why it is null. And we do not want any arguments. That's why it is null. But in case if you would have liked to have it, how you would have written it? You would have written it something like this. You can see. You can say that this is nothing but the column name. So I can just write it like this. Column name. So this will be my string. Column name like this. And what this will be replaced by? This will be replaced by this string. So you can have my phone number here, and this particular thing will be replaced by this. So if you want phone numbers from starting with like something, anything ending with this 4 or 5 digits, so you can write something like this. And a complex one for this can be treated in this way. Like if you have column 1, and you say column 1 should be greater than this, and then you say that column 2 should be less than this, and then again you have something and say that column 3 should be equal to 0. So you now see that in the selection you have say where column 1 is greater than this, column 2 is greater than this question mark, and column 3 equal to 0. You have two question marks, and that's why your selection argument will have two values. So if you see here, we have one value, which is this, which is value 1. Then we have a comma, and then we have another string value, which is this value 2. So in short, complex one can be written like this. So this is how like you give a projection, selection, and selection arguments. And then again, the sort order, we are sorting by company name. Descending, we have only one record. It does not matter. Again, this is just for your like tutorial purpose. That's why I'm filling up the content. Then I am defining up the MDB helper with the context, and then like I'm defining up the DB. And this time, rather than saying get writable database, I am saying get readable database. So I have read it, and then after reading it, like I am firing up the query with all these variables. db.query is something which can be used if you directly want to execute an SQL statement. So obviously, like in table contract, we saw that you can use something like this. Uh, in helper class, we have that db.execute SQL. This will directly execute an SQL statement, but this is not recommended because the functions which Android has built will always give you a better performance over these. So now I go back over here on to my function and see that I have defined in a cursor. So cursor is taking this particular db.query returns an object of cursor. So we are handling of this cursor over here, and this then we are saying that while cursor dot move to next. So cursor is at position 0 at first. When you say move to next, it will move up to the first record. Here in this case, we are just fetching up the, you can see the projections. We are just fetching up the company name. And now I go back over here and see this while statement. And like now we are like putting up as this particular thing will like return a string array, and this string array will have only one value, which will be the company name, because we are fetching up only the company name. And then we are logging up the value of this. So cursor has some functions like cursor dot get string, and we can have something like cursor dot get, you can see double, extra, float, int, count. We have, you have a lot of values which you can get. So the main point is you should know what column you're fetching and what kind of column it is. If it is a number column, you should use getInt. If it is a string column, then you should use getString. Here it is a string column. So I'm using cursor.getString. It takes up the index of the column, and we can get the index by the name using this method of cursor, get column index or throw. And this takes the column name as the input, which is nothing but this. So again, I am logging it over here and I am putting up into a variable company name over here. And if there might be a chance like here you are just extracting a single row and a single column. If you have multiple rows, every time it will move on to a next row and you will have to perform the actions as per the row. But if you have multiple columns, then you will have to put up a loop like this, where it will say that it will move up till projection dot length, and you will have to create a string array which will be projection and say it to be this. So we are already using up one name, so that's why we have to use it like this. So now this particular array has all the column names. Here we are fetching up only one, but if you have fetched up more, then you can like say it as the length and then see which projection it is by this, and like you can apply a switch statement. So if it will be column 1, you can do the column 1 task, say task for column 2. So similarly, like you can apply up your logic out here. So I just wanted you to give an overview. You can see it here. So at the end, like we are closing up the cursor, DB and database. So here we have to close one more thing, which is the cursor, which was not there in while inserting up. And then we are catching up the exceptions and returning up the company name. This particular function is returning up the company name. Now we will go back here and see that we have the company name here. So for a better view, let me just copy this company name and make it a class variable. And here now we have to show it up on the UI. So to show it up on the UI, I need a handler to this text view. So I will just go at the very top and say text view and say the center text. Let me copy it here after setting up the contents, and let me give it the value. So I will just say this equal to text view and paste, and I want the ID to be the ID was company name. So now we have the handler ready, and here now we just have to say center text dot set text, and the text is company name. So this builds up this particular scenario. So as previously you were saying something, the value was this is my default value, you will not be able to see it now. You should not be able to see it now. And let me rerun it. And I'm on the first page. Let me move on to the next page, which is this. And as I move on to the next page, it gives me nothing on the center and there is an error. So what is an error? Println needs a message. This is because we are like setting up this message and it has null. I guess so. So to analyze the issue, let me see where it went and let me see some more actions. So here we are starting up the new activity, and here it says that I am in on create method, and then it says that I am in projection. So we have projection over here, and it is giving us the company name. So it gives us error on this line, which is 111. So it gives us error because it says print ln needs a message. So this is coming up null for sure. Let me say string dot value of this, and let me just paste it over here, save it, and let me rerun it, terminate this app, rerun it, clear the logs, and move on to the next page. So now we see that the value it is showing up is null. And why it is showing up so many times? So here we have this loop while cursor dot move to next. Let me just move it down. So here we have this loop, and every time like it is this loop is moving for every record, and like I have like rerun this application many times, and as I open up the second activity there is one record added every time. So if I see up that the next time it will have more of the count. Let us count it. So we have company name once, one record, two, three, four, five, five records as of now. So the next time if I run it, there will be six records. See this, let me just put up this log. So next time when I will run it, you will be able to find that count is available in the logs rather than counting it yourself. Clear the logs and slide it. So we see that the count is 6 now, right? We should not have placed it inside, rather than I should have placed it outside. So this is good now. So we are getting a null value, which means that we are putting up a null value, and we are putting up the values from static variables. And here it is in static variable. Here in insert query you can see that we are putting up the company name via the static variable dot company name, which is null. Let me change it from null to say I am new company. Let me save it. Let me go back out here, and in my read, if you see that I am putting up the last, like every time I am replacing the value of the company name, and that's why it will be replaced till the very end, and at the very end we are inserting up this new value, and we will be getting this new value in the company name, and then we will be moving out, and then we can show it up on the front end. So this seems fine now. Let me just rerun it, install it, and just move it till the end. Oh, let me delete the logs first, and now move it till the end. So as I move it till the end, now I see company name null 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 null, and the first company was I am a new company. So it means you require it only for the first one. So let me do it this way. So to resolve this, for now let me just set up a variable out here. Say int 0, int I equal to 0, and here say if I is equal to 0, then please do this. Otherwise do not do this. So we just want it to be done on the very first row, and as it do it, let me change I to 1, that for like it will not move into this particular area the next time. And now this should show you of the correct code, and let me install it and delete the logs and just get it up till the end. So now if you see here, it says I am a new company, which says that you are reading up from the database. So this brings up this lesson to the end, and I expect you to learn on update and delete by yourself. As you have learned the arguments in select or the read statement, you have the same arguments in update and delete, and like you should be able to use them very easily now.